Yes, welcome back. You're still watching Citizen Extra right here on Citizen TV. My name is Freddie Ndibuli. We continue discussing election preparedness. For this last hour, I want to look at the role of the media in credible elections. And for this discussion, we're privileged to have, and let me start with the lady, Dr. Nancy Buka, a lecturer, a media practitioner in her own right, sitting right next to Bwana Patrick Gadhara, a cartoonist. That means you're also a media practitioner. We also do have for this particular discussion Daniel Wangenye and Victor Bwire from the Media Council. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen, and karibuni sana for this particular discussion. Of course, we've been having very heated discussions in as far as election preparedness is concerned, to do with the IEBC, all the other bodies that are working on this particular election. Now, one of the very much vilified actors in these elections is the media. Yes, you saw what happened with the presidential debates. The media has been accused of taking sides by political parties, political candidates. The media has been accused of placing some candidates on a pedestal, others being ignored. The media has been criticized, traditional media has been criticized in social media as lacking in the real touch of what is happening and losing touch with the electorate. But surely, what is the role that the media should be playing generally? Let's start with you, Bwana Victor Bwire. What exactly should the media be doing, and have we been doing it?
Thank you, Fred. One, media has a traditional role, but within the election environment, it's purely the civic duty to help citizens through providing forums for people to sell their ideas and agenda, so that then Kenyans are able to make a decision on which leader they want, based on their manifestos and what they plan to do for the electorate. So largely that's and that's how we look at the role of the media, largely the watchdog role. So towards this end, media has been providing forums, largely either radio, TV, or newspaper, for the various candidates across the political divide to sell the agenda, and this has happened well.
Now, Patrick, of course, when it comes to cartoonists especially, and because most of your work is considered opinion, yes, do you think the role of opinion in media, especially as we move to the elections, has been much criticized, that perhaps even the observers and the people who consume this kind of information by the media, broadcast or newspapers, they do not understand the role of opinion from the media?
Well, I think the media's role is to provide a forum for the dispersal of opinions in various formats, so whether it's cartoons or written word. I think that we should have a diversity of opinions that's put out there, and I think that the more that the media encourages voices to be heard, and also delves into the issues that these opinions raise, that it would actually help inform the electorate. So when they go cast their ballots, they are pretty clear about what the stands of the various candidates are. And more importantly, they are also able to, for themselves, formulate what they want out of the elections. It's a bit strange to me that we run elections essentially based on what the candidates want and what they promise, but not whether those elections actually address the issues that the people have. And these issues are articulated through various forums, and I think whether it's on social media or it's people meeting in a bar or whatever and talking about things, that's where they articulate their problems. And I think the media is sort of duty bound to actually give forums for this to be aired and to be dispersed, so people can decide for themselves which particular candidate best suits what they want is proposing things that will actually address the problems they have, as opposed to simply what the candidates want.
Yes. Dr. Nancy Buka, one of the very interesting things, and when it comes to criticizing the media, there's always this line that these journalists of nowadays are not deep. These new journalists don't know their job. These are half-baked journalists. And that's a kind of criticism that comes our way nowadays, and that's a day in day. It's a daily affair now. As a media trainer, do you agree with that kind of criticism?
Thank you. I think we need to, you know, in terms of interrogating that criticism, we need to look at the context in which that criticism is being made. And looking at this election and the coverage that has been given to this election, one, it shouldn't be lost to us that there have been lots of changes in media houses. A number of media houses have basically lost the seasoned journalists who, you know, have a history in terms of covering elections. For most of the journalists who are going to be covering this election, this is the first encounter that they're having with an election and the election process. Having said that, I think in terms of, you know, whether they are able to do it properly, it's not just the work of training institutions to be able to do that, but the media houses themselves should be able to do that, and interested stakeholders as well. I think one of the things that has happened in this election is that there has been a lot of training from various organizations. Media Council has been very key in ensuring that journalists are trained. There has been a guideline that was drawn by, you know, several people, myself included as part of the technical team, to ensure that, you know, there is a bare minimum in terms of how elections should be covered. And that is, you know, looking at the current scenario that media houses then are faced with, where you have a lot of young talent, a lot of people who for them this is going to be their first election to cover. That needed to be done. But then the most important thing again with regards to this election, and hence the rigorous training that has taken place internally and also involving other stakeholders such as Media Council, IFES that has done a lot of training, Aga Khan University where I work, that a lot of training has been done on reporting, is because of the changes, you know, the electoral laws, for example, that come into play, the processes. One of the most interesting things with this election is that there have been so many court cases, you know, that have come with that, and some of these are some of the things that had been unforeseen in terms of, you know, preparing journalists to be able to cover the elections. So yes, they have done well. Could they have done better? Yes, they could, because there are certain things that, you know, we were not prepared for in terms of, you know, preparing those that are going to cover. But again, you know, there is still room for us to learn with this. Some of those changes might not necessarily affect the coverage of the elections in the next coming days, but going forward, I think there are many lessons for us to learn from how this election has been covered.
Daniel Wangenya, don't you think that the media has done well? And if at all you are to gauge and give us a rating, that generally the Kenyan media, out of 10, what rating would you give Kenyan media, and as far as covering this particular electoral process?
Fred, without necessarily even giving an actual rating on the media, one thing I can say is that the Kenyan media has done absolutely very well, and in real sense they are excellent, because looking at the way we are approaching the elections and the preparedness, the media has actually highlighted us on a number of issues which otherwise, if the media would not have covered it, would have gone underneath without being covered. And that's why I always tell that media is one of the most powerful tools in any democratic society. Nevertheless, as we also practice, and as media also practice and try to enlighten the Kenyan public on the processes of the election, starting from where we have come from up to where we are today, there is also the principles of ethics, whereby we have to check and see, before releasing certain kind of information to the public, what is it, the impact that they are going to generate. Because some of the information, that is why it is always said that before any information is released, why don't we first verify the authenticity of that information, so that there is a certain information which we can release at a particular time, and then we may end up doing worse than we were in the beginning. That is why accountability always goes hand in hand with responsibility. The media particularly, like in these elections and even in the previous elections, has actually done excellent job, and we commend them and we say kudos. Even us in the civil society activism, some of the things we may do them like trying to protect the public property, but if the media does not come out and cover and highlight those things, you know, there is a saying in Kikuyu that says that mnyama huwa hadharau mwenye amemuona, anadharau mwenye ameshout. So when you see an antelope, you just see it and keep quiet. there is no harm in it. But when you shout, that is when now the antelope will complain that you have shouted, that is why you have exposed me to the public, and those people whom you have wanted to do something negative will just subside and go underneath. So that is why I would say that shouting, that highlighting, that enlightening is very important, and that is what we want, that at every process, let the media come out, highlight these issues, but also, as they highlight those issues, let there be a sense of responsibility and accountability on anything they air.
Fred, if I may very quickly just respond to what he said.
Yes, Patrick.
I think there are a few problems with how the media has covered the elections. First is it's really captured by the political discourse, which is really about what the candidates want rather than what the public wants. If you remember, the Nation earlier this year had published what it called a national agenda. And I still don't see anywhere where they actually compare that national agenda with what has actually been put out by the candidates. The second thing is, I think the media has actually been quite complicit in the subversion, if you will, of our electoral laws. So, for example, the advertisements that are running throughout all TV stations from the Presidential Delivery Unit are illegal according to the Electoral Offences Act. And even the Kenyan, the Ombudsman has actually said this, but yet our media keeps running them, So I think that we've got to be very careful when we start patting ourselves on the back and thinking we've done a good job. Actually, I think that we have pretty much been complicit in the betrayal of this election and not really allowed room for people to properly question and even conducted ourselves in a way that we would be above board when it comes to ensuring that the election is properly run. The last thing I'll say is, I think the media should be careful when it puts itself in the position of deciding which information or what information people should or should not have. The only thing that it should be verifying is whether what it's putting out is truth.
Patrick, if I may hear you right, you say that the media should not edit itself.
I think the media should not edit truth, should not be in a position of saying that there is some information that we know is true, but we will not let it out to people because we are afraid of how they will react. It's actually up to the people. Give it to them, let them decide. But if it's the truth,
is that how it works, really?
Fred, I mean, sometimes I listen to Patrick and I wonder, media is not a free enterprise. Media is not a pipeline. Media has trained professionals. We have a theory called agenda setting theory of the media. Media sets the agenda. So the business of saying that the media should just give what citizens need to know, not necessarily what they want to know. Because once, as a journalist, you receive information, you look at the law, you look at the context, you look at a lot of things before you give. So you can't say that media is just a pipeline to be passing information from wherever. Then why are we trained them as professionals?
But why do they? How do they decide what citizens need to know?
So to me, there is a reason why Citizen TV, for example, has editors who have a professional responsibility to make a determination on what they want to run, looking at the editorial policies, what they stand for as a news, as a media. It can't be that anybody who brings anything which Patrick thinks should the public should know should be run by Citizen. It can't work like that.
Can I comment?
Let's give Nancy an opportunity. Nancy?
Yeah, thank you. I'm not as loud as a gentleman, so I'll constantly need to intervene. But what I want to say is that I think I have a problem every time we ask ourselves, has the media won, and what score should we give ourselves? It is the media's responsibility to report, and to report fairly, report impartially, give provide that unfettered scrutiny and room for discussion. And the moment we then start ranking ourselves and asking ourselves whether we have won, whether we whether we are scoring a 10 out of 10, then we lose what our mandate is. And that mandate is larger than how well we have scored. It should be on how effectively we have carried out the mandate that is expected of us as media. Having said that, I think one of the things that we want to remember is, in an election process such as this, the media has a responsibility not just to the candidates who are contesting for an election, but to the citizens and to the voters as well. Now, I think in terms of interrogation, that we need to ask ourselves, when we look at those three constituents, have they effectively been covered by media? Do we know who the candidates are in this election? Do we know what they stand for? And can we then be voting as voters and as citizens, then, vote from a position of knowledge? And what has been evident is that a number of the reports that we are seeing is basically the conventional reporting when it comes to news. And that, again, you cannot fault the media wholesomely there, because during the campaign period, then you want to let people know what these people are saying in their campaign agendas as they go out there to campaign. Of course, we can argue whether that has been done, objectively in terms of ensuring that every player has a voice. I think there has been debate about independent candidates and some of the what we are calling small parties in quotes not getting the kind of attention and the space that they would want. But then again, looking at, from the voters' point of view, I think one of the most important roles of media is to be able to scrutinize some of the things that, these people say when they go out there. Have we done that enough? A lot more needs to be done, because when you cover, for example, a political candidate, you're likely to just focus on what they are telling you. But I think the media's role is bigger than that. It's bigger than just reporting. It scrutinizes what they are saying. It fact checks what they are saying, and then ensures that the voter has an opportunity.
Don't you think there has been quite some effort towards that?
There has been great effort, immense effort in that regard. But I think what is missing sometimes is, and again, we also have to understand the dynamics that then work in a newsroom, that the amount of time that media has to be able to process all this information and investigate and interrogate and internalize this takes a bit of time. So what this means for us going forward is that when we think about election coverage, it shouldn't end with an election. It shouldn't end on August 9th and 10th, and then we say we have ultimately, effectively covered the election. That continuous scrutiny needs to take place way beyond, the polling date, way beyond the election, and way beyond the next election, so that as these people get into another election cycle, we are then able to interrogate this. A number of these candidates, and this is going to be my last point, a number of these candidates have given a lot of campaign promises in the next 100 days. That's where media needs to come in, holding them to account and checking what they're saying against what they're doing, so that then we don't save it just for an election cycle, because then we lose a lot of what needs to be covered.
Fred,
yes, Warangeja.
Yes, Fred. Fred, I would want to state categorically that there are three things which, when you release them, you cannot recover them. One of them is an arrow, another one is a bullet, and the third one is a word of the mouth. Media, as it exists, does not exist in a vacuum. Just as we say the law does not exist in isolation. It exists in an environment. And this is an environment we are calling Kenya. There are those people who want to be covered by whichever means. Okay? And that is why we are insisting that responsibility goes with accountability. There is a person who wants, because I cannot be covered for the good things I'm doing, I want to be extreme on the other side and release very filthy words and dirty words, because I know that is where the media will highlight and release it. And that is why we are saying, as the media practitioners, when before that information is released, is there some level of authenticating that information? Is there a source that we can quote? And the moment, remember, you release those words, or the moment you air whatever views that have been corrected from the crowd, be ready and be certain that the words you are releasing will not harm this country. As we move to these elections, that is why we are calling upon, let the media be responsible enough. Before they release anything, regardless of how sweet or how it may enter the public and the crowd, let that team of editors sit down, authenticate it, see whether if we release this information, will it this hurt this country or will it build this country? Then when we settle that, we are going to move forward.
I really have a problem with that formulation, Fred. Because again, as we saw in 2013, the media really glossed over lots of what went wrong under the idea if we told or we said this was wrong, then we would spark violence. Which I think was very wrong. I think the media, yes, should authenticate the information it gets, should verify the information it gets, shouldn't put out false information, and it should also guard against being sort of a megaphone, if you will, for extreme voices. But that said, I think the idea that it should also sit back and say, well, there is certain information we will not release because it's not in the public interest.
But do you think that it is within the media's rights to actually make that decision, that yes, there's some information that we will simply not release because it does have consequences? Everything the media
no, I think, again, that is where, that's actually quite a dangerous track, I think, for the media to take. You know, as we saw in 2013, and again, don't forget, the media itself admitted this in the aftermath of 2013, that, oh, we overtrusted the IEBC. Why did they do that? You know, and my point is, if you actually sit back and say that you trust people, a democracy is about people ruling themselves, and you've got to trust that if I give them the correct information, you know, that they will make the correct decisions based on that information. But when you start saying that, well, there's some information I know, but I will not tell them, you know, then you're creating quite problematic and dangerous areas.
Fred, I want to be frank, because we talk of a utopia media and a practical media in Kenya. Because Patrick is stuck with a utopia media, what ought to happen. But we live in an environment. For example, there's nothing called Kenya media. There's media in Kenya. Because there's no single place where you get editors sit and make a decision. This is a story we are going to run tomorrow. The 40 radio station or so. Media is in fierce competition. Citizen has a story that wants to beat NTV. So there's no way editors sit and say we will kill this story and we will do that. So the thinking that there's always Kenya media where they sit and decide is not there. So that's two. We need to, like Daniel said, we work in an environment so that's why there's defamation law, there's Media Council Complaints Commission, because it was envisaged that media can do mistakes. And if they do mistakes, corrective procedures are taken to correct. So we are not saying media is a perfect institution, but media is doing what is practically, professionally possible in Kenya to ensure that it does what it can. So to me, I'm impressed with that, despite the challenges that people are going through. That, I mean, how do you expect, for example, if you are told the president does 12 meetings or 20 meetings, public rallies in a day, a single day, how do you expect the media houses to keep up with that pressure when the others are using state resources to transverse? How many of our media houses have choppers, for example? So when you say they covered only his rally in Ruiru, but they never covered in Turkana, but look at the practical, how they have reached Turkana to cover. So to me, media is doing what's practically and professionally possible, so that we give Kenyans what we might not have the best, like Dr. said, but what is happening is that sometimes also we also look at the media users. How are our users using the media? How these stations, Citizen Extras and the rest, have been created simply, and these politicians who are always meeting in corridors from this. So when we are saying we are not giving enough room for these politicians, who is filling these spaces?
I haven't said that. I haven't said that. And there's one other thing, I mean, quickly, that
yes, Patrick.
I think Victor is kind of glossing over when he speaks about the media is not compelled in any way, for example, to run the illegal PDU ads. But it does it. You know, in 2013 they did actually sit down and agree.
You can bring a complaint to that effect.
So let's not pretend
that
this sort of this
I have reservation, Fred, as pertains to the way that is saying that in 2013 the media overtrusted IEBC.
They say
well,
which report?
Gentlemen, let's allow one
yes, what we are saying here, that is what we call responsible media. You see, IEBC, or whichever body has been created constitutionally within the parameters of the law and the constitution of this country and any other existing law, we have a duty, because these are institutions we have created ourselves as citizens. Now, when you go now and get a data from the public, and you get another one from IEBC, or whichever body that has been created by the parliament and by the constitution of this country, and then you want to vary depending with your interest or depending with which group of interest political class you are coming from, you are creating anarchy and chaos in this country. And that is why I commend the media, because if they trusted the IEBC, we cannot say overtrusting the IEBC. It is simply trusting an institution that has been created by the law.
Is it wrong for the media to ask questions of such institutions?
They can ask questions, but checks and balance do not say you vary or you come with a different opinion.
My question is based on the fact that this time round the focus is more on the process. In fact, most of the litigation in court has a lot to do with the process. Yes, We've been focusing on the politics and the pronouncements at political rallies, but the electoral process, what system will we use, what election, how many ballot papers, who will vote, who is eligible, what is the number, how many ballot papers have been printed, for example. Don't you think that media has actually played a very pivotal role this time around?
I think it has. I think it has, and it continues to do that. And part of that scrutiny extends not just to looking at the candidates and the contestants, but also looking at the electoral processes as a whole. And I think we have seen, you know, a lot of scrutiny coming to bear in terms of the election management. You know, I think the debate and a lot of attention has been given to, you know, the printing of the ballot papers and the numbers and what that looks like and what the implications of having, you know, an excess number of you know, the papers would actually mean. I think one of the things that usually happens is that media finds itself in the middle of, you know, being bashed from both sides. There are those who feel, you know, and sometimes I feel that, you know, we do this extremely unfairly. You know, we expect the ideal, but we forget that we're operating in certain realities where these media houses have certain challenges. There is ownership interest that's conflicting, you know, with some of the editorial decisions that have to come to bear. There is a whole balance about, you know, how do we cover various stories. I think let's look at what has been done and whether it has been done properly. What are the gaps? What's missing? What is it that then should inform the coverage for the next couple of days as we get ourselves into you know, voting, and what should inform coverage going forward. One of the things that I think needs to happen, and I'm not saying that, you know, media needs to pat itself in the back and say yes, we have done great, that with every exceptional period such as an election like this one, there are lots of lessons for media to learn. And what needs to happen is that with everything that is covered, what are some of the things that, you know, are we evaluating ourselves? Are we looking at our performance? Are we looking at what we could have done differently? Are we looking at what has happened well? And that's why I said that one of the greatest challenges with this election, and in terms of reporting, is the whole election laws and court reporting. That is a challenge that many media houses have had because it was unforeseen. Going into an election, most of the media houses in this country have done a lot of what we call scenario mapping in terms of, you know, the outcome of the results, you know, the announcements, and, you know, if this then what, if this then what. And that is part of that preparation, so that then they don't find themselves in a situation where they don't know how to navigate, because the public looks up to them.
Yes.
Public looks up to media, public respects the media, and media is very key in shaping that public opinion.
But that respect seems to be waning, especially in the advent of social media. Victor Bwire, most of the criticism coming the way of traditional media is the ability of social media to actually dispense of this information much faster, some unverified. Don't you think that, or where is the placement of the traditional media, especially in these elections, vis-a-vis social media?
Thank you, Fred. One, those discussions about social media, and I look at social media as a complementary, an alternative to mainstream media. So they are not in competition. Each of them has a space to play, which they must play. So to us at mainstream media, we are not looking at social media as any threat. In fact, social media is one of the biggest sources of information for mainstream media. So that once something is online, and you have seen a recent report on fake news and how it's affecting news in Kenya, is that what we have been encouraging media houses, the mainstream, is you can use social media as a source of information, but verify, contextualize, and professionalize the information. So to us, we have seen that social media is a major source of information for mainstream media. A few occasions where some media would run a clip they got from social media without checking, which is a mistake, a professional mistake. But in most of the cases, you see most of the clips we are using are largely WhatsApp messages or social from some of those parties where mainstream media cannot reach, where politicians have gone. So to us, we are looking at social media as a media, and what we have been doing largely is also to extend our trainings and thinking to social media for responsible use of social media. That this forum, if used well, has helped in other democracies. We only need professionalism, and we have obviously been appealing to government not to come up with stringent laws that would kill social media, because we know it is a very vital role in what media is doing. And you can see almost all media houses, even mainstream, have now a social media platform, simply because we are responding. If you looked at National Media Group releasing of their results last week, you saw social media as one of the major places they made profit. So that's an area where most of our media house, Citizen included, have now running a convergence approach to running of media, and they have integrated social media as one of their major outlets for their information.
Yes, Patrick, of course, you're very critical of the media, and as far as the kind of content we carry. Do you agree that probably the media has become a slave to some candidates, that probably, let's say, in the presidential race, that there are some campaign teams that do run and do dictate what takes place and what runs on media?
I wouldn't go so far as to say that campaign teams dictate what you get, but I do think that there are many problems with how the media covers things. Very quickly, just to respond to something that Daniel said, I would say that the media really should not set itself up as a megaphone for government. If it's meant to be a watchdog for government, you know, it really needs to be critical about what it gets and skeptical about the information it gets from government and from these agencies that we have set up. I like, right, for example, in the coming elections, that there will be results that will be released at polling station level, at constituency level. We shouldn't really sit back and wait for the IEBC to give us a final tally. We can do that tallying for ourselves. It's simple mathematics. You know, and the media cannot be afraid. Let me finish.
We will come to that point.
Let me Daniel, please, I get your time.
You know, where we are heading to, I think it's a very critical stage.
Daniel, we will come to that particular issue of announcement of results in a short.
Let me finish what I'm saying. You know, so the idea that if what they give is at variance with the IEBC, that therefore the media should shut up, I think is wrong. You know, they should ask why is it at variance, you know, and ask a question, you know, and not shy away from it. I think that in the way it conducts itself, the media itself needs to be above board. I think by running the PDU ads that it does, it's already impinging its own credibility, because these are illegal ads. You know, there's no dispute about that. You know, so why they're running them is problematic.
Okay.
You know, and I'll go. I mean, you asked about social media. I think social media is a space for citizens to engage, for citizens to speak. You know, and we should be fairly careful when we start policing how citizens should speak, when we start talking about professionalism in using social media. It's like going into a bar and telling people you've got to be professional about how you speak. You know, that is not the way. Let people engage, let people speak. You know, and then from there we can actually have that interrogation, that interaction that is the oxygen of democracy, not trend. Sort of control it.
Fred, yes, let me speak something about, because it seems Gadara has a lot of issue with the PDU running, whatever. And he hasn't moved to
what do you know? Come on. What I want to
Fred, just as I was beginning by saying that even the media itself is a creation of the law. Our CEO of Media Council have just said very well that even the social media complements what the mainstream media does. What is remaining with the social media is media regulations and guidelines. We make law to fit ourselves so that we can move forward. Now, coming back to what Gadara is particularly critical so much about the PDUs, the PDUs or whichever adverts that the media is running is absolutely an informative kind of an informational advert. When you bring on board information, and you want people to understand, when the government is running PDUs, they are not absolutely campaigning for a particular class of people. What they are doing, they are just informing, which the media should do, informing the public and the citizens of Kenya, this is what has been done, this is what will be done, and this is what we are expecting. Information is perfect. What we need is to know what there's a village out there who already listens to the radio to know what the government is doing. So learning PDUs has nothing to do with these elections.
Okay.
You can even learn PDUs after the elections.
Daniel, let's have it orderly. I have this question to Nancy, and probably this is where the question should have gone. There's a very thin line between public responsibility and commercial interests. And most of the media that we have is privately owned in Kenya. Are we saying, for example, that privately owned media should not carry advertisements from any particular side? Because that seems to be the kind of argument between Daniel and Patrick here. Nancy?
Thank you, Fred. It's very hot sitting in between these two gentlemen who have very, very different views. I think one, and this goes back to where we started. We are looking at an ideal situation, and in that ideal situation, then one would argue whether or not that should happen. In this case, you know, there's a business side of things that one also has to look at in interrogating this. And I think what's important is that there are complaint mechanisms that are in place, so that, you know, if certain constituencies feel aggrieved by certain coverage, then or certain political parties or contestants getting an upper hand as compared to them, then that provision is there. But you know, the media houses are running these from a commercial point of view. You know, for them it's an income generating, you know, they're advertising, so it's an income generating platform. I think for me what's critical is where it comes to where media has a say, and that's in the reportage, the coverage of various issues. Are we having equal representation? And we have just looked at, we've just been monitoring the media, looking at the month of May and the month of June, looking at the month of July, in terms of whether or not various political parties and candidates have had the space in the reportage, in the news reports. There has been a great attempt to be fair, and I think we need to commend the media for doing that. And that is something that we cannot, you know, we cannot push under the table. In terms of ensuring that political parties, political players have a space for them to articulate their issues, has that space been provided? And to a large extent it has been provided. To all candidates, maybe not. Looking at the place of women, and one would argue that the number of women then who are contesting in this election is about just 10%. So then we should give them 10% of the coverage. You know, one could argue that way. But we, you know, as part of that, as part of playing our role in ensuring that affirmative action comes to bear, is ensuring that women, in as much as they are a small percentage contesting in this election, that we provide them that space. For me, I think what we now need to do is look at, you know, we have done our role in terms of ensuring that the political parties and the contestants have had enough space. Analysts and you know, those of us who come into shows like this and debate have had the space. What's important for me going forward in the next couple of days is voter education, because without having that voter being educated, then that process is not complete. And the question then we should be asking ourselves is, in what ways, in addition to the advertising and the public service announcements that IEBC is churning out, what are we doing as media houses to ensure that the voter is educated? Because it's also in our interest.
Are you saying that media houses should take it upon themselves to educate the voter on the process?
That is part of their responsibility to voters, because, you know, when you're looking at your role, it's not just for the campaigners and for the candidates. You also have a duty to the voters, and you know that duty, because media also plays a key role in information and educating the public. It needs to, you know, do that, and do that really, you know, aggressively. We have seen instances where that has happened in the last week across, you know, various TV stations, where as part of their news bulletin, they've had sessions where voters are guided on how to go, you know, when you get into a polling station, this is what you need to do, and that's commendable.
Okay. Fred, if I may very quickly just educate my friend here, Daniel, since you said part of the role of the media is education. Election Offences Act, Section 14, subsection 2 says that no government shall publish any advertisements of achievements of the respective government, either in the print media, electronic media, or by way of banners or hoardings in public places during the election period. It is clear that the PDU ads are illegal, you know, and when you sit here and you start saying that we should respect the Constitution, we should respect these laws we set up, yet the media continues to give a platform for the breaking of those very laws, and you're here sort of whatever, protecting it or defending it. You know, for me, I find that to be quite a hypocritical stance. You know, the fact is they are illegal. The ombudsman has already said that they are illegal. You know, so let's not pretend that the
What about the custodian? What about the custodian of the election regulations, who is the IEBC?
Yeah, right. The IEBC should be put on the spot. Why is this happening? Why is it allowing this to happen?
My friend Patrick is leading law, partisan, under the interest on the whole section suits him best. It is the same law
that
gives us a platform of information.
Okay.
I'm speaking. I don't know which village he comes from, but I'm imagining his mother or his social, wherever he is, would want to know what is going on in our country. Are we together? And that is why, I would want to know. I want to know, because the same constitution on the Bill of Rights gives us the right to information. The same law which says that if I want to seek some information, I should be at liberty to seek that information and be given it. And it's a responsibility of the government of the day. It is the responsibility of the government of the day to make sure it is inform its citizen and it educates its citizens
we're running out of time.
Going on.
We're running out of time, but I wouldn't want you to leave the studio without discussing the latest issue to do with the media, and that is what CS for ICT John Mucheru said, that he's going to shut down any media house that will go out and announce the election results. Victor Bura, I want to hear your views on that particular issue, because I know there must be a perspective from the Media Council.
Thank you, Fred. One, the law is very clear that the business of announcing the results is IBC business. It's clear, and the media, we have in all our trainings, legal departments of all media houses have been appraised of this, that it's only IBC that announces results. Media houses will be tallying, and I'm aware Citizen TV, for example, has employed almost 290. Nation has done the same. In all constituencies, they will have staff. Their work is to tally, but they will only announce results that are given by the returning officers in each of the respective constituencies. So it's not the business of media houses to announce their other results they tallied for themselves, but they must quote IBC, because by law it's only IBC that announces results. So to me, I see no contradiction in that, because it's very clear, even in the Media Council guidelines that we developed, it's the business of IBC to announce results.
Patrick, on this issue?
There was no need to threaten the media, but it was just fair to say that election laws, results will be announced by IBC, from then which media would quote.
But Patrick, do you think that threat to shut down media was justified?
No, and I think it is quite unfortunate that the CS takes this stance. You know, when Victor speaks of IEBC announcing results, we've got to question, what does that mean? The IEBC, at the polling station level, an IEBC officer will announce what the results have been at that polling station and will post them. You know, we'll put up on a wall at the polling station what those results are. The courts have said that is final. The IEBC at the national level cannot change that. You know, that is IEBC announcing. At the constituency level, where the returning officer then tallies the results that are coming from this polling station and announces it, that is IEBC announcing. And the media can take all the results from the polling station level or from the constituency level and add them up for themselves, as anybody, any Kenyan can do. You know, and it can announce its own tally.
It can.
You know, it can say, let me finish. I think it can say that we have got the environment. Let me finish.
Perhaps the question is,
why can it not?
By
what law prevents this?
Gentlemen, by flashing numbers on screen, is that tantamount to an announcement of results? That if candidate A has 800,000 votes and candidate B has 500 votes, and we flash them on screen, is that an announcement of results? Is it tallying of results?
If you are announcing the results as given by IBC returning officers, there's no offense.
And you can add them up.
If you are flashing results as tallied by your own staff.
But Victor, the question is, the media will not be part of counting the votes. The counting is conducted by IEBC.
Right.
Yes.
There's no way the media will do its own counting of votes, then have its own different count. So definitely the numbers you are relaying on screen are from the IEBC.
Let me clear this thread.
There have been incidences, and some of these are lessons learned from the primaries. That's why even in our engagement with the media, and that's why I was saying most of the media houses have now employed about 290 so that they are represented in every constituency.
Okay.
Because there were instances where somebody will go to a polling station or end of the streams and says Victor takes an early lead, having just looked at the results of one or two polling centers. That's why they are harmonizing to say that so long as the results, because initially, and you remember even the chairman of Royal Media Service said, at some stage Royal Media had tallied its own results and they had their own results. Now the challenge only comes if media houses would announce their own tallied results.
Okay.
But so long as they are quoting IBC results,
everything is okay.
None.
Now,
let me just highlight
you know, there's a lady sitting between the two of you, and I need to give her an opportunity because I don't think she'll be able to. And Nancy, what are your thoughts on this?
I think for me there is no. I think it was one of those things that you look at it, you ask yourself, where is the conflict of interest here? As Victor has said, we have, media houses have invested in ensuring that they have, reporters across, the 290, constituencies. They have, 47 additional reporters in the counties. And what these reporters will be doing is basically reporting on the results that will be released by IEBC in those centers. Now, IEBC is not, I think we need to demystify IEBC. It's not, the office at Bomas. It's also those people who are working for IEBC in the respective constituencies, and those are the results that that media will also be reporting. But in this process, media will also be monitoring that process, and they can comment, they can ask questions, they can interrogate, that process. I think in terms of announcing those results, it's IEBC's announcements that then will be projected. Yes. And that for
Daniel,
me,
what problem do you have with this, the fact that media can do actually its own mathematics from what the IEBC gives us?
I want us to look at the election process very critically, Fred. And I would absolutely agree with Victor. And it's even God's favor that Patrick is not the CEO of Media Council of Kenya, because he would have chaos. And if you look at the levels of the election process, it starts with the polling station. When at the polling station, there is a presiding officer at the polling station who has the authority to count the number of votes each candidate have got, and even pin them at the notice board of that particular station. And that is where now the media can now come in and quote the results that have already been declared and pinned in the notice board, because the moment they are pinned in the notice board, they become a public property, and they can announce that at that particular level. Then we go to the next level, which is the constituency. At the constituency level, we have the constituency returning officer, and he corrects all the forms from various polling stations. If one constituency have maybe 300 polling stations, he corrects all the results from the polling station, tally them, and also pin them again in the notice board at the constituency tallying center. And that is where again the media come and pick and again declare those results. They have already been declared by the constituency returning officer. From the constituency level, we can go to counties for the governor.
Daniel,
but finally we go to the national tallying center. So what the media is doing is just a replica of what has already been declared by IEBC. But they cannot tally themselves.
Why not?
An illegality.
They
don't have the mandate.
Our time is up. Our time is up, ladies.
They can just tally and keep them under the table.
Thank you so much, Daniel. Thank you so much, Daniel Wangeje.
We go that way, we are putting this country.
Gentlemen. And our time is up. Daniel Wangeje, thank you so much. Patrick Gadara, asante sana. Victor Bure from the Media Council of Kenya. And of course, Dr. Nancy Buka, a lecturer, a media lecturer. Thank you so much. Of course, this issue about media's responsibility in as far as informing the public on the electoral process is a discussion that could continue, especially now that we are only 7 days to the elections. Thank you so much for that discussion. My name is Fred Indimuli. I'd like to give room to my colleague, Swale Mdoe, who takes over. Citizen Extra in the Swahili language. But before that, I'd like to leave you with Jackie Maribe, our reporter who's been on the Jubilee Party campaign trail. Today the Jubilee Party is in Kisii. We do understand. A very good afternoon to you, Jackie. I know it is not yet afternoon, it's only 4 minutes to. But what do we expect from the Jubilee Party this afternoon, even as I bid the viewers goodbye?
Right, Fred. Indeed, it's literally, you know, afternoon. It's at the strike of midday. We're currently in Kisii County, home to 546,000 registered voters. We're currently where President Uhuru Kenyatta and his deputy William Ruto will receive a flurry of activity right behind me. I don't know whether my cameraman Chirchir can be able to show you those pictures as leaders start, you know, arriving here just to receive President Uhuru Kenyatta and his deputy William Ruto. They're very keen on, you know, getting a share of these registered voters here, and they are making a return visit to this county later this afternoon. They will also be heading to what they believe is one of their strongholds, and that is Bomet County, and then they will be heading over to Mumias in Kakamega County, which is also a perceived opposition stronghold, but they are also hoping that what they have been touting as their track record and their action plan for 2017-2022 will be enough to rally enough support to give them a second term in office. So Fred, I will let you cross over to Swale Mdoe, but as we get the updates and as they land here in Kisii and we cross over to Suneka where the public rally will be held, of course the issues that they will be addressing, of course, you know, they have been touting, you know, development, electricity, roads, as we have been telling you constantly. These are the issues that they are hoping will be enough to rally enough support behind their re-election. But Fred, interestingly enough, the NASA team that is on a break today, they are resting, was supposed to be having a rally here in Kisii as well. There was an issue over who would be holding the public rally at the Gusii Stadium. The Jubilee Brigade obviously carrying the day, as we will be heading over there very shortly. But the NASA Brigade saying that they will therefore have to move their rallies tomorrow, and this is an issue that we also expect to be addressed, even as President Uhuru Kenyatta, his deputy William Ruto, and local leaders from here congregate and you know, basically just speak to the electorate. The issue of the push and pull and tussle over venues as well, we are expecting to come up in their address to the public. Fred.
Jackie Maribe there live from Kisii. Thank you, Jackie, for that report on the Jubilee Party campaigns happening there this afternoon. Time now for me to leave studio. Swale Mdoe is coming up for Citizen Extra in Swahili. Good afternoon.